like to call the April 1st, 2019 meeting of the New Canaan Board of Education to order. First up is to approve the minutes from the March 18th meeting. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes? Penny, second. Deanna? All those in favor who were there? I think everyone who was there is in favor. All right. 2 abstentions. Thanks. Next is to review and approve the agenda. Have a motion? Deanna? Second? Jen? All those in favor? Great, thanks. Next is comments from the public. To ensure the public's right to be heard, the board has set aside time during the meeting for public comments. 2 minutes will be allotted to each speaker and a maximum of 15 minutes to each subject. Is there anyone who would like to be heard? You just state your name. One second.
Oh, okay. Hi, my name is Ava Ricci, and I am a sophomore here at the high school. I wanted to share with you my thoughts on sleep and how it affects my life. First of all, school is hard. This is a very academic environment, and we all work really hard to get good grades. I do theater, and some days, after rehearsals, I've spent almost 12 hours at school, and I just don't want to come home and do more homework. I don't think grown-ups would want to go home after 12 hours of work and then come home and do more work. What is there to look forward to in that life? I did stop doing theater this winter so that I could have more time to get my work done, and that helped. But theater is the one thing I love, so I'm going to try to make it work this spring. My mom turns off my Wi-Fi at 11, sometimes 11:30 if I still have to finish homework. I try and fall asleep at that point, but my body doesn't usually get sleepy until 12. I wake up at 6:20, usually in the dark, and it feels like I haven't even slept. I am lucky though because I have 4 days in my rotation that I have a sleep in. I get an extra hour and it really does make such a big difference. I can wake up when the sun is up, so at least I feel like it's morning and not still night. And it's just a little easier to get up and get through the day. It's not like I don't still feel stressed, but I can deal with my anxiety better. Getting an extra hour of sleep doesn't make me all of a sudden love school, but when I feel better rested, it does give me some strength to deal with hard things in life. I hope you will hurry up and change the high school to start an hour later. I will feel it will help every student here. Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Karen Willett. I wanted to comment on one of the questions in a school start time survey that students took before winter break. I don't know if you guys have all seen the survey actually, so I can forward it tomorrow if you haven't. I believe it was written by the faculty start time committee, but I'm not sure about that either. So the question read, if or when you believe that you're not getting enough sleep, in order of importance, what are the causes? And the options were homework, device usage, after-school commitments, and time management. This question seems to be trying to get us off the hook on changing start times by deflecting blame to other causes. And this was a start time survey, just to be clear. It doesn't even include school start times as an answer option. But doctors have been telling us since 2014 that school start times are clearly a cause of chronic sleep deprivation, and that we need to change. So that survey and some of the comments that were made here at the last BOE meeting have me worried that we are only going to decide to make a change if we can find a solution that everybody wants, including the students, and that has no real trade-offs. I worry we are stuck in the mindset that the status quo is a real option. I can't imagine how anyone can defend staying with the current system. If you were starting a system from scratch and you put 10 options on the table, the current one is probably the last one you would pick, because we know it is harming the health of our children every day. We have to stop doing that, even if all the options that are healthy for students are also difficult to implement, maybe expensive, inconvenience one group, or cause problems for a particular sport. We can't put those things, or our fear that some people will be angry, above the health of our children. And while it's important to also address homework, device usage, overscheduling, and time management, these other things, and all of these other things, we really can't get out of this by blaming other causes. Thank you.
Thanks.
Good evening, Dr. Lutzy and members of the Board of Ed. It's been almost 5 years since U.S. doctors began urging middle and high schools to start school no earlier than 8:30 a.m. They concluded that starting school too early is a key factor in chronic sleep deprivation among adolescents. But this isn't news. The science is established. The biological sleep patterns of teenage brains are different from adults, and yet it is during those formative hours of REM sleep that the New Canaan School District requires its students to be in class and ready to learn. Dr. Judith Owens wrote that chronic sleep loss in children and adolescents is one of the most common and easily fixable public health issues in the United States today. So why? Why is New Canaan leadership still asking, should we change start times? Back in October, Craig Donovan, an active citizen in our town and a college professor, wrote an op-ed published by The Advertiser. In his letter entitled "School Leaders' Delay in Changing Start Times is an Attack on Students' Health," he wrote, "It is long past the point when anyone can deny the science. Every medical and scientific group agrees sleep is not a luxury, and lack of sleep from starting school too early has real costs and is hurting our children. The majority of high school students fail to get the sleep that they need for their physical and mental well-being, all driven by biological clocks that they cannot control." His letter continued to say, "What we seem to have here in New Canaan is the familiar pattern of denying the science, then calling for more studies and reviews, then requiring lengthy alternative plans to be developed, which, after every moment of delay has been squeezed out of them, results in the lament that no matter how important the matter is, we just can't afford to do anything about it." He said, "Try saying it out loud with me. Starting school too early makes our kids sick and hurts their learning, but we can't afford to change." And he continued to say, "If we won't let schools hurt our kids by leaving lead in their drinking water or toxins in their food or asbestos in their buildings, no matter their cost or the efforts required, why are we willing to let this everyday attack on their health and welfare continue?"
That's 2 minutes.
So I ask you then, when will we listen to the doctors, to the parents, and to the concerned citizens of our town, like Professor Donovan, and fix this?
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Tracey Masala. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and a member of the New Canaan community, and I'm here to lend support to the idea of delaying our start time in our schools. The World Health Organization in 2018 issued a report that said that the report covered 8 developed countries, including the U.S. 35% of adolescents met criteria for an anxiety disorder, and that number continues to grow. I think that focus on anxiety as a disorder does disservice to the number of kids that are anxious in our populations. Sleep is a key factor in maintaining both physical and mental health. And I know our school system is devoted to increasing emotional intelligence. And I think that sleep is one of the keys. Good sleep, proper sleep, is a key to helping with all of the other tools we're giving our kids to improve emotional intelligence. Lack of sleep, along with a poor diet, mood-altering drugs like caffeine, nicotine, and alcohol, make us more vulnerable, make us more likely to behave ineffectively. We're more sensitive, we're more reactive, we're less able to regulate our emotions, and our emotional part of our brain, the amygdala, takes over. So that the frontal cortex, which for most of our kids is really taxed anyway, it doesn't even have a chance. So the natural sleep cycle is 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. That's when our body naturally goes into sleep mode and naturally goes into wake mode. If we can get our kids closer to this natural sleep cycle, we give them another key tool in their toolbox to manage themselves more effectively, to reduce their vulnerabilities. So I would ask that that the idea of a later start time be considered seriously, so that we can add that to the list of tools we're giving our kids for emotional intelligence.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Heather Moore. As someone who's closely followed the discussion on school start times for almost 2 years, it feels like we've lost some focus on the most important reason to start school for teenagers at 8:30 or later. and that is the undisputed medical fact that our teenagers are being harmed by a 7:30 a.m. school start time. It's not about opinions, commutes, homework habits, or athletics. It's about the health of our children, and it's fitting that emotional intelligence is on the agenda for tonight. I mentioned the following at last November's Board of Ed meeting. The New Canaan School District has begun the implementation of an emotional intelligence program, also known as RULER, across the district. RULER follows the protocol created by Dr. Mark Brackett, founding director of the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence. Last October, Dr. Brackett spoke to parents in New Canaan. He discussed how it's very difficult to regulate your emotions when you haven't had enough sleep, and that adequate sleep is a prerequisite to emotional intelligence, resilience, and happiness. Dr. Brackett made a very clear connection between adequate sleep and emotional intelligence. Why would we spend the time and resources to implement his program, but drag our feet on addressing the dangers of sleep-deprived teenagers? And as an added thought, and as I'm sure you've all seen, this week is Safe Driving Awareness Week. In his book, Dr. Matthew Walker states the following: "You may find it surprising that vehicle accidents caused by drowsy driving exceed those caused by alcohol and drugs combined." Think about that. The urgency to implement an 8:30 a.m. or later start time is quite possibly the most relevant way to keep our communities safe on the roads. The implementation needs to remain a top priority for our school district. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Ann Chimek, and I'm speaking tonight as a parent who supports changes to healthy start times for our students, and as a South PTC BOE rep who hears from parents almost every day asking about the status of the work on later start times. It would be very helpful if at the next BOE meeting, you all could highlight progress specifically against the initiatives on the timeline, a timeline that our district developed to make sure that the BOE had enough information to make a decision in June. The research is clear. Students do get more sleep when start times are later, and while our district is very focused on important emotional wellness initiatives, changing start times for our teens is the one program our district could adopt that could benefit the health of 2,000 students every year. When the Princeton, New Jersey school district changed its start time, its superintendent wrote the following: "While improving our students' health and reducing stress are complex and multifaceted issues, we do know that a later start time is one measure that can have significant benefits for our students. We know there won't be an ideal solution that works perfectly for every single stakeholder. But what we do know is that following the Medical Association guidelines for school start times will have a positive impact for our students. Yes, a 2-tier system is expensive, and a 3-tier system may mean that we need to adjust our family schedules quite a bit as we adapt to change. In addition to the overwhelming research on the benefits of later start times for teens, there's also research showing that parent education as to why this is an important public health issue is a key element in a district's successful change to start times. While it's great news that our district is planning such a parent education session, I urge you to quickly move forward with scheduling the date and announcing the speaker, as well as a date that new transportation scenarios will be presented for board member and community feedback. You've heard from many, many parents this year via public comments, letters to the editor, and emails. I join them in looking to the BOE and administration to come up with solutions instead of focusing on challenges and how hard it may be to change. Our students deserve it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, thanks. Next up is reports and recognition. The first on the agenda is school climate and emotional intelligence update with Dr. Bliss.
Good evening. Thanks for having me tonight.
Thanks.
I've been really excited actually to be here this evening because so much wonderful work has been happening across the district, and I'm just really looking forward to letting you know a little bit about it tonight. So as you know, emotional intelligence falls under district goal number 4, and that includes promoting an environment that fosters respect, ethical behavior, and responsible citizenship. And the picture that you see on the right is what we call a class charter. You're going to hear a lot more about those tonight, but this is one from an elementary classroom. And the district objectives that I'm going to be speaking to tonight we have 3 of them that fell under the emotional intelligence work. One is to develop and implement the K-8 work in EI, and also to develop the implementation of the 9-12 faculty. And lastly, to really come together and and have some presentations on school climate initiatives and the EI for parents. So we've had a lot with parents I'll tell you a little bit more about. So I wanted to just mention, I know you've seen this before, our social, academic, and personal learning framework. And this is the framework that we've had as a district, of course, for many years. What's new and exciting about the EI work is this is the first time we've really had a language that we'll be able to use across the entire district. So that common language and those assured experiences for our students. And using the ruler method, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about, we'll be able to really reach our goals of increasing self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship skills. So you all know by now, I think, what is emotional intelligence, but just a quick review on that. It is the knowledge, attitude, and skills associated with recognizing, understanding, labeling, expressing, and regulating emotions. And as you know, we as a district worked closely with Yale University and the Center for Emotional Intelligence over the past couple of years. And we really love this particular system because it is systematic, it's evidence-based, and it's something that we know can really help us with our goals of helping all of our kids across the district. So the question, do emotions really matter? This, I guess, is my why slide. Why are we really doing this? What's important about this work? And I know you've heard me talk before about the importance of emotional intelligence and emotions in learning. We know that certainly anxiety and stress impact learning. We know that more and more, in fact, Harvard came out with a white paper just last week on motivation and teaching us a lot about the importance of emotions in motivation. So there's an approach motivation when kids are feeling positive emotions, they want to go towards something and really get involved in it. And when they're feeling those negative emotions, they're going to pull away. So that idea of motivation and emotion, they're really inextricably linked. And I think that's what's so important about thinking about this work in terms of our learning. We know decision-making and emotions are very important. I'm sure we've all made those decisions, rash decisions in a moment of emotion. Relationship quality, we know that's the #1 predictor for really overall satisfaction in life. And in addition, I think we're seeing more and more in the workplace how this is something that's just essential for our students to have those relationships, that they can have empathy and work together collaboratively with others in school and in the workplace. Obviously, physical and mental health, I can't say enough about that. Unfortunately, you are hearing sobering statistics across the nation about the increases in anxiety and depression. There was recently an article in the New York Times you may have seen about college-age kids that were saying about 60% of them say they feel overwhelming anxiety on a regular basis, and 40% said that they actually felt depression to a level that they felt kind of paralyzed by it. So those numbers are really having us question about how do we really prepare our kids to be ready for college and career. So that's why I think this work is so important, and emotions do matter. We have a lot of evidence behind the work that we're doing, and this is just a few. You've seen these before, but I won't go in detail. Obviously, the higher academic achievement I've talked about before, which is about 11 to 17% depending on the study. But it's a very evidence-based model, so we're excited to be using it. This is kind of the how slide. So how are we doing this work? And Yale University has these 4 tools. They call them the anchor tools that you've probably heard a little bit about. The charter and the mood meter are the 2 that we've rolled out this year to the students K-8. And I'll talk a little bit more about those in a minute. But the charter is a vision for how people want to feel in the schools. And the mood meter is a tool that we use for self-awareness and labeling emotion and social awareness as well. Meta Moment and Blueprint, we won't be rolling out K-8 until next year. Meta Moment is a tool to be used for emotion regulation, and Blueprint is basically a tool for interpersonal problem solving. So just to kind of walk you through quickly the implementation timeline, you remember last year we really just focused on adults, and that's one of the key attributes of the ruler approach, which is that it's so important that the adults have emotional intelligence. We know that when we are trained in it, we're going to be our best selves in our classrooms, and we're going to be models for our students. So I think that's been really important work, that phase 1 of really teaching our teachers. Phase 2 has been this year, and that's we've been rolling out K-8, these emotional intelligence tools of the charter and the mood meter. And we've been working with the high school about the adult work and bringing them on board in terms of that, and you'll see a little bit more about that. We've also been beginning some parent presentations and bringing parents into it, so I'll talk a little bit more about that. And next year will be phase 3, which will be students 9-12, so the high school students will begin to see these tools and we'll be rolling it out to them. And we'll bring the next set of tools to K-8 and we'll continue our work with parents. So that's kind of where we are. Just a reminder about how the ruler approach works. It's a train-the-trainer model, and we have sent faculty from all of the buildings to Yale. They're trained, and then they come back, and they are the ones who train the rest of the faculty. So that's been really effective and exciting to see our faculty be the leaders of this work. We've done about 10 hours of professional learning for faculty this year. And we continue to get ongoing coaching, which is free and part of the entire package, which is a wonderful thing as we go forward. So I wanted to just present a little bit about the kind of work we've done this year, EI by the numbers. And at this point, we have trained 435 certified staff in EI, 75 non-certified staff, so that includes TAs and nurses and so forth. 2,800 students, K-8, and over 500 parents. That includes the parents who attended Mark Brackett's presentation, as well as presentations that I've been doing at the elementary schools. So I'm going to shift to talk a little bit about these tools. Charter is the first tool that I mentioned, and the charter is really a way for us and the kids to think about how do we want to feel at school. So these are the 3 charter questions that you see here. How do we want to feel? What do we need to do to feel that way? And what strategies can we use together if we're not feeling that way? And it's been so rewarding to see the kids begin, and you're going to have a little video of some of the children talking about it, but to see them start to use this language with each other, with their teachers, and really care about the words that they come up with. What you see in the picture here is actually kind of a charter in process where kids were voting on the words that they wanted, and then you'll see a couple of pictures of charters. I wanted to mention that we do all of our curriculum writing here at New Canaan. While Yale does provide us with some templates, then we sit together with Dr. Corrente, teachers, myself, and we really work together to come up with the kinds of lessons that make the most sense for the kids. We roll it out to the teachers, and then the teachers have just run with it, and that's been so inspiring to see their creativity and passion, and they have just taken each of the different grade levels and come up with some really creative ways, Jeopardy games and videos and all kinds of wonderful ideas. So that's been great. And you see the book Chrysanthemum here because that's the way we started with K-5. So a lot of what we do is embedded in our academics. It's through read-alouds. This is a wonderful book that talks about how Chrysanthemum feels upset when her peers begin to tease her about her name. And so the kids were able to read the book, start to identify the kinds of things that Chrysanthemum felt, how she wanted to feel, and how she could try to solve her problems, and how the classroom could have solved the problems. So here are some examples of some student charters. We see them all over the district. It's been a lot of fun to see, and to see how involved the kids have been in creating them. One of the things that I think is so powerful about these is they are starting with the kids. So it's a very different model than the top-down, here are the rules and you need to follow them. We know that kids really do, when they feel the ownership of something, then we have a lot more buy-in from the children themselves. So that's been great to see. We've also been hard at work on the staff charters. You saw some of these last year. The new one is the high school. They worked hard on theirs this year. And also the administration worked on a charter and started the year off working on that together. So you'll see some pictures of that later. And it's been great to see this has become kind of a ritual in many of the faculty meetings where the principals will begin with some kind of a charter activity to remind people where they are. We did some dot voting on different words and how people feel, and then we kind of strategize, if you aren't feeling something, what can we be doing more to feel more inspired, for example, or to feel more supported. So here's just a couple of ways that the charter is used. The picture is so adorable. These are charter champions. I'll just start with that. This is something that they've been doing in kindergarten, and the charter champions are chosen based on, their being able to follow the charter and be helpful and kind to others. And the teachers are really so excited about it. I had one kindergarten teacher come over and say to me, you know, I was very skeptical about this. Honestly, I wasn't really sure about it. And I've completely changed my mind because of the kids. The kids are the ones that are kind of leading the way and saying how exciting it is. So that's been terrific to see. The teachers are finding it very helpful for peer conflict. So while they're actually in the classroom, if something comes up, it doesn't take a lot of time. It keeps them from wasting time on, you know, Foursquare disputes because they can just easily go to the charter and the kids resolve the conflict on their own. So we're really, I think that's one of the things I'm excited about, is seeing the kids begin to resolve things and take ownership of that as well. I think we are seeing the specials people really take this on in an incredible way. We were in an art room and we saw a mood meter and it had different art in each of the quadrants of the mood meter. So we had the Scream in, you know, the red, and so on, the Picasso blue period in the blue. We've had different music teachers, for example, making playlists around music and different emotions. So it's been fun to see the specials involved in all of this as well. So faculty meeting, morning meeting, peer conflicts, academic lessons are all part of how we use the charter. I had so many great quotes from exit tickets that I wanted to bring like all 4 pages, but I couldn't do that, so I tried to pick a few, and this is one that I did love. This was just from a teacher in an exit ticket. I don't know which teacher, so I'd love to talk to her at some point. But she says, or he says, I overheard a small group of students working together, and they would not move on to the next question until all 3 were finished and ready. One student who was behind thanked his group for making him feel included, and included is one of their charter words. So this was written in a response to tell us some of the positive outcomes you've seen to emotional intelligence. And I think it just speaks to how it's integrated again into the day. It's part of just a quick, hey, how do we work together in teams? And the kids are really beginning to own it for themselves, which is great to see. So the mood meter you've heard a lot about. Again, it's the tool for really teaching kids self-awareness, for giving them that emotional vocabulary, helping them think about how other people feel, and skills for regulating emotion. It's also really the foundation for empathy, right? So in order to understand how somebody else feels, we have to understand our own feelings. And so I think it's been really an effective tool for the kids. What's, again, been exciting is some of the teachers were not sure about it, but it's the kids, they keep saying they can't wait to show and talk about how they're feeling. It's really important to them to do that. And the other thing that's been wonderful to hear about and see as we walk through the classrooms is if one child does put themselves in the red, you know, or the blue, saying that they're having a rougher day, the other kids come to them and say, what's happening with Kate? You know, why is John upset today? So there's a lot of work where the kids are coming together. We had one classroom where we went in, it was a gym class, and the kids were plotting themselves on the mood meter. It takes about 30 seconds. And one of the kids was in the red, and he said he felt frustrated. And of course, we looked down, he had a broken leg, and they were playing basketball that day. So, but for him to be able to say that, it gives the teacher an opportunity to tune into that child and help the other kids even come around and say, how can we help this child? So it's been great to see the many ways that it's being used. We've had 3 mood meter lessons over the course of the year. There's an introduction, there's a lesson on labeling, and there's a lesson on regulating emotion as well. There's also something called the mood meter check-ins, which are just kind of when they come in from recess, if they're really in the yellow, as we say, lots of energy, and they need to calm down and get into a learning zone in green, you can just do a quick 2-minute check-in with the kids and help them to get a strategy to get back into the learning zone. We're finding it's very integrated into the day in academics, and again, teachers' creativity just never ceases to amaze me. In the top picture, you'll notice a very small mood meter, and this is something one teacher started, and it's kind of caught on. So each child in her class has a mood meter on the table, on their desk. It allows the students to actually plot themselves on the mood meter very quickly, if needed, and also they're talking a lot about character emotions. And I had one teacher stop me to say, you know, what's been amazing to me is how it's really changed the way that the students think about characters. Understanding the emotion has helped them understand the character's motivations, and they're getting characters in a much more complex way, which is great to hear. So the most recent lesson has been on strategies for emotion regulation, and that's been exciting to see kids really working on this. I think this is something we all continue to work on in our lives, throughout our lives. As Mark Brackett likes to say, 2 + 2 is 4. You learn it and you know it and you're done. But I think with emotion regulation, it's something that even as adults, we continue to learn the kids need practice at. And so it's been great to see them be able to do that in their classrooms. We've had great feedback from teachers. Again, just a couple things I wanted to share with you. This is from exit tickets across the district. Students are more responsive than in the past when we talk about being respectful. I see a stronger effort to change behaviors. Students are recognizing and sharing their feelings more often. Student learning and performance has increased. It's becoming aligned with the work we're already doing. Rather than being something added, it's being worked into what we're doing now. I've seen staff bonding as well as student bonding from the EI work, and that has been a great sort of secondary effect to see the faculty themselves come together and doing this work together and tune into each other and have a chance to talk about feelings, even how they feel at the end of the day, you know, and having their own struggles and helping each other with that. So it's been great to get that feedback. I mentioned parent work, and I think that we know that's really a key to our success in this work is involving parents in the work we're doing. It's been wonderful to be able to have Mark here, and more recently I've been able to go out to some of the elementary schools. I have another presentation planned at Saks coming up in April. And those are really opportunities to share with parents about the work that we are doing, to show them the kinds of things that are happening in the school. Ruler gives us a number of fantastic resources to share with parents so they can practice some of the tools at home with their kids, and that way it's not just during the school day, it's something that's carrying on. So I think that's been a really positive aspect of our work this year as well. So next steps, as I mentioned, we're thinking about that rolling out to the students for high school students, and there are very specific lessons that Yale and Ruler have developed that are really focused on high school students. So we're excited we're taking a look at those, and we'll be working on that in the next couple of months. We also will be, as I said, rolling out K-8, these new tools of Meta Moment, which is that emotion regulation and blueprint. And we'll be continuing to work with parents as we go forward. So I just want to say what an incredible year it's been for me. I think that this has really been one of the most exciting years of my career, really, to be able to see kids be in this position of have these skills preventatively. You know, I've been a mental health professional for years, and so often I see them at the end when they're having difficulties, and it's been wonderful to see them have these skills. And I do think we are preparing them for a world that can be complex, that they need resilience, and these are the skills that really are going to give them that resilience to be able to face those challenges that we inevitably have with learning and in life. So it's been a great year, and I wanted to end with just this quote that nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care, which I think kind of sums up the importance of all this work. You know, as one of the teachers said to me, she said, "I don't teach English, I teach English students." And I think that's really what this work is all about. It's about tuning in to knowing that this is a profession of relationships, and we have to understand our kids' emotions and our own emotions to be as effective as we can be in the work we're doing. So with that, I want to thank so many people, certainly the board, for your support in this work that you've given us. It's just been a tremendous year. Dr. Lutzy, Dr. Crenti, and Dr. Pianka, who really had the vision to bring this work, and Dr. Crenti in particular, who's been intimately involved in this rollout and has been an incredible leader of this work. And all of the implementation teams in all the buildings. We have two members here, Jonathan Adams and Sarah Bross, who have been fantastic at our Saks Middle School. And the passion and commitment that all of these teams have brought to the work has just been incredible. You can see each and every PL, they're excited, they roll it out in so many creative ways, more than I could come up with, so it's been great to work with professionals like that. And I have to send out one other thank you, and that's to Clint McLeod, who couldn't be here tonight, but he's actually the person who put together the video that we're going to show you and put up with me flooding his inbox with like 100 videos and so forth. So I think this is just really exciting work. As I said, I'll share with you, my son went off to college this year, so I'm an empty nester, which is a little tough. And as a psychology person, he decided to take a psychology course this year. And he called about 3 months in and he said, Mom, I have really underestimated the role of emotion in our lives. So I'm a complete failure at home. I'm just going to tell you that right now, but I'm glad I was able to do the work here. But anyway, I do want to share with you this video because it just is a little glimpse of kind of what's happening around the district. So bear with me and we'll get that going for you. Okay, even better. Thanks. No problem.
The Yale Emotional Intelligence approach begins with implementation team faculty members attending a 2-day training at Yale and returning to train their colleagues on the ruler skills. The elementary schools and Sachs Middle School teams attended their training in 2017, and the high school attended in 2018.
Going through the training at Yale, it really changed my perspective. And having more conversations with staff members and with kids, the goal is to get the best out of the students.
The high school developed their staff charter in September and continued to find new ways to keep it alive, including a new ritual to start faculty meetings with a positive share about how the charter has been lived by colleagues. They have also spent the year learning about the mood meter, meta moment, and ways to recognize and regulate feelings. We are excited to bring these skills to the students next year. This year was an exciting year for our emotional intelligence work. After a year of learning and planning, we are ready to roll the emotional intelligence lessons out to our students K-8. Every classroom K-5 and grade levels 6 through 8 developed their own charter to decide how they wanted to feel in their school. What would they do to feel that way, and what would they do if they were not feeling that way? Research shows that when students have a voice in developing the classroom culture, they are more likely to follow the expected norms. Teachers used their creativity and worked with the students to develop their charters, and the results have been overwhelmingly positive. Teachers are noticing an increase in caring, empathy, and positive behavior in their classrooms.
Kindergarten at our school, at South School, decided to come up with a charter that would be for the whole grade. And we thought it would be really important for everybody to have the same words for our charter so that all the children had a common language, and so did the teachers.
How do you think he's helping Mac feel? What are some of the words he might be helping Mac feel?
And we felt that that's been really important when we've noticed that the kids are also using the common language while talking to their friends and while talking to the teachers, and they've been able to connect it to the mood meter.
Can you tell us why you were the charter champion?
Because I was raising my hands and I was making other people feel special and included.
The class charter helps you by remembering how to do kind things.
The charter is for the whole classroom, not just for me. Everybody can agree on something so we can solve problems easily.
Use it to when I'm having a rough day, I try and get back on the charter words.
And think of students more on that basis of how they want to feel and how they want to make their peers feel.
K-8 students learned about how to recognize, understand, label, express, and regulate their feelings using the mood meter. They learned to pay attention to their energy level and the pleasantness or unpleasantness of their emotion, increasing their self-awareness and emotional literacy. As Mark Brackett says, you have to name it to tame it.
I really love my name, and what you're saying is hurting my feelings.
The mood meter, I can tell people not feeling this way in the classroom, when I'm not feeling safe, and then they can help me feel better.
Now decide what quadrant would that feeling be in. Hold up a 1 for red, a 2 for yellow, a 3 for green, for blue, or a 4 for green.
Luke, what are you doing?
I'm trying to figure out where I am on the mood meter today.
Well, how do you feel?
I'm feeling positive and relaxed.
That sounds like you're in the green.
Sounds right.
Glad I could help.
For their most recent lessons, students are building strategy walls in the back of their classrooms to help them remember the many ways they can regulate their feelings and shift quadrants on the mood meter.
If I have a student who is going through a rough time and I know that before, I can then help them to regulate those emotions, or we can help them regulate those emotions to avoid any negative behaviors.
One strategy that I've used is deep breath. So if you're feeling mad and you need to calm down, you take deep breaths.
I've used walking away because when I'm in the red, it helps me get away from a problem that I'm in.
It has been a truly transformational year as we watch students and adults across the district learn to be more self-aware and regulated. The positive impact on engagement, learning, behavior, relationships, and health has only just begun.
So that gives you a little picture of some of the wonderful things happening across the district, and I just wonder if you have any questions. I'm happy to answer.
Thank you. It's outstanding. Any questions? Penny?
I think this is tremendous work. It's really wonderful to see it rolling out and students benefiting. I was just, wow, there. Now I'm green. Sorry. Thank you for all the work. What I was wondering is, are we going to have any sort of statistics, in terms of incidences of bullying before we had ruler and after we had ruler, or ways to measure the level of anxiety of our students that we're thinking, that we know about, that we're going to track, that we'll get reports on?
Absolutely. We've always in the district had a school climate survey, and the questions in the school climate are very related to all the things we're talking about. There are specific questions about inclusion and exclusion, for example, kids being kind to each other, the investment of teachers in terms of interest in kinds of activities that kids are doing. So we did that survey last year. We'll be doing it again in 2 years. So we'll have data at that point. Even from so the survey that we did last year, there was some growth, some nice growth actually, around areas of inclusion, and that was just with the faculty work. But I think, and the other thing that went up quite a bit in many of the schools was an item around faculty asking students about their interests and being really connected, and that's from the student report, that they felt the teachers were more interested in who they were. So I do feel like that's something that, it's correlational, but has some indication of some of the impact of the work. But we will continue to look at that school climate data, and there's other data we can look at as well, as you mentioned, bullying reports and other things we can pull. So it will be important to do that as we go forward.
Great, thank you.
Questions? Maria?
I'm curious, as a former teacher, I know we always had a discipline plan at the beginning of the year, and this seems a little bit like that, in that you want to lay down expectations for the year. What's the time commitment getting to the point where you said it's only 30 seconds at the beginning of class, and is it every class that students label their moods?
It's a great question. I mean, really, what's amazing about this is in terms of actual lessons, the mood meter was 3 lessons of 20 minutes each. So it's quite simple, and that's nice. The kids get it. And then from that point, it really is, if a teacher wants to do a check-in after recess, if kids are kind of bouncing off the walls to get them back to learning, that's a good time to do it. Sometimes in morning meetings, which we do have in the elementary schools, the teachers will use some of this. They might pick one of the words out of their charter and have their morning meeting on that word. This week we're going to focus on respect, if that's something that they had noticed maybe the students weren't being as respectful as they hoped. So in morning meeting, yes. And 3 major lessons. I think the charter, the development of the charter, was also 3 lessons at the very beginning of the year. One where they answered the first question, one where they answered the second, and one where they answered the third. So the amount of time is actually quite little, and then most of it becomes just part of it. And I think that's what's so important about this. It's an approach. It's really not about the lessons, and Mark will say that too. Eventually kids get it, and you're not going to have to teach them the mood meter next year. They already know it. Now it's really a matter of, it's a mindset. It's a mindset we have as educators about tuning into our kids and their emotions and our emotions. So it's less about the lessons and more about that way of being.
So theoretically, K through 8, you have a charter every year. Is that right? Or
yes,
it's a new
yes.
charter every school year?
Yes, probably in K through 5 there would be for the new classrooms. For SACs, there's some discussion about how we, might move the charter that they actually already did forward with some revisions, and there may be some other ways to do it, but yeah.
And how will that look for high school? Because their moods change probably
Yeah.
every
Yeah, I
25
think adolescents
minutes.
really need this work, right? Yes, so in the high school, in terms of where the lessons will be?
Like
or-
how you lay the foundation, then where will the lessons be,
Yeah.
how often?
I mean, we haven't made all those final decisions. We have talked about Connections, obviously, as the natural place. We're already doing this work in Connections, so it would be sort of bringing it into that 20-minute lesson that they have every other cycle. We've talked about health as a possibility, too, of maybe just putting, the health curriculum, I think, is expanding next year, so there's some place where we could put some of this work into health as well.
I just want to add in a couple things too. Also, we need to remember our 8th graders are getting trained now, so they'll head into the high school as a cohort of kids who've gone through some of that training. We've learned a lot from rolling this out with 7th and 8th graders and how we might want to tweak it as we're moving forward with older kids. And then I do want to just go back, Maria, also about the question in regards to all the schools still do have their behavior matrices. So that's just part of those expected behaviors that we have all kids, and what do we want the cafeteria to look like and sound like, and what do we want the playground. And so where the charter fits in is when those kids are following the behavior matrix, then you certainly feel more respected or you feel safe. So that's where those feeling words integrate in. So the behavior matrix, and especially in the elementary schools, remains constant. It's the same behavior matrix that they have all the time. It's the charter that shifts.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Blissett. I wanted to, I recently had the opportunity to tour probably the largest Head Start program in the state, and was impressed that they also have the mood meter in every classroom on the door. And I wondered if there was any thought, and I know it's new, but of reaching back to the pre-Ks in the area so that, our kids come in sort of prepared, to sort of use these tools and, I don't know if that, I know it's new, so it's another.
It's a great question. I do know, we have, we have a preschool at West, and we have worked with the preschool teachers. They've been part of all of our PLs and emotional intelligence PLs. So, and Yale actually has a very specific curriculum just for lessons. I guess they are lessons for preschool. So they have begun to bring in the mood meter, especially. They're not doing charters at preschool, but they do have the mood meter, and they've been beginning to do that, which has been great. And it's a great question. I think one of the things eventually I would love to talk more about is that community. I know I've spoken with community members who've said we want to be in on this too. How can we help? So yeah, I think that's a great idea, just to think about maybe talking to other preschools and whether they might be interested.
Maria?
I know there are still some parents who aren't really sure what this looks like in the classroom, even though there have been training sessions, or I don't know if they actually thought they were training sessions. I know Mark Brackett came to the district.
Right.
Is there a way to share this more directly? Especially, I would want to know what my child experienced throughout the day. Sometimes they may not tell you.
It's a great point, and we actually just had all of our elementary teachers spend some of their faculty meeting time in the past week developing newsletters for parents. So they pulled together everything they've done over the course of the year and put photos in there. And Yale also gives us some very specific resources, I think I mentioned, for parents. So we linked all of those resources. So it's ideas of what you can do at home, do a home charter, or how you could use the mood meter at home. We also did videotape my presentation, so for what that's worth, they're going to put that up as well, so people who weren't able to be there can watch that. And the presentation, as I said, included a lot about what we're doing in the schools as well as what parents could do at home. So I'm hoping those newsletters, and we'll continue this. It's just the beginning. But we have had some help from PTC to give us feedback as well, and they were saying, you know what, don't just send it out. Put it as a hard copy in the book bag. So we're going to do that, the old school, because sometimes I think, it just gets overwhelming as a parent. But that is a really, I mean that, I really feel like it's a key part to our success is having that partnership with parents. So any feedback about that?
And just to add to that, I think, or I'm wondering, are there indicators where you would call a parent if there was something that was mapped out on the mood meter throughout the day? Is there something that would raise,
No, I think
require a
it's
phone call home?
probably the same as it's always been in any elementary classroom, that the teacher would use their judgment about if they saw a child was upset, and
Mhm.
in the same kind of way would call a parent if they, if they were concerned about that child. Yeah.
Okay.
Hi. So this isn't really a question, more of a comment, but thank you so much for all that you guys are doing. This is such important work. I'm, like my sister has younger kids, and it's been really fun to hear. I'm hearing these words from my niece, who's like 7 years old and so cute, but like talking about her, going in her mad moment and like all this stuff. But it's so cool to hear them speaking this language at such young ages, which really is setting them up for such success with this, because, then you see like the high schoolers. And I'm so glad this is coming there, because, there is a lot of anxiety and stress at the high school, and it's okay. Like, it's good for them to be able to talk about it. And, and I think that the kids coming up, it's going to be more of the norm, which I think is so great. And Maria touched upon, like, I was wondering how you were going to integrate this into the high school. I've been hearing a little bit from my 8th grader. But, it'll be interesting to see how this all, comes out. And, connection sounds like, it would be a good idea. But anyway, thank you for this.
Sure. Yeah. I think it is exciting to watch, and that's one of the real, the power of this is thinking about these kids getting this work over the course of, potentially 12 years, and where they'll be in that position, graduating with those kinds of skills. So, yeah, and the integration between SACS and the high school, as I said, we're spending a lot of time thinking about how to make that work.
I would just ask, as we go forward, maybe to think about measurement, particularly when we get it into the older grades, because I think although some of the issues are more complex, I think kids probably have an easier time before and after expressing their feelings. So when we think about this initiative plus things like start times and scheduling and all those issues, it would be good to understand what impacts we're actually having. And it's hard to, we won't be able to understand causality, but I think understanding if we're headed in the right direction, which I think we all believe we are, is, I think, will be important. But this is absolutely outstanding work, and applaud you and the team for everything you've done. Any other questions?
Thanks to everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just one other thing before we go to the budget update, I just wanted to highlight, which isn't really part of the emotional intelligence initiative at the high school, although there's, I know, a lot that goes on in that regard, notwithstanding the fact that we have this separate track. There was some questions from parents about a speaker that was at the high school, I think it was last week or the week before, Carlos Gomez, and I just wanted to express my support for what the high school did and having him come and speak and really focus on the issue of empathy and mutual respect, and really just understanding various perspectives. So although some people, I think, had a view that it might be political or something along those lines, I spent some time looking at the situation, what the poems that he put forth and presented, and I didn't see any political issues at all. I saw, an effort to teach kids and present in an impactful way, what empathy means, what, mutual respect means. And I think that's, very important for us to teach, whether it's part of this emotional intelligence initiative specifically or not. And I think it gets kids talking about, their various interests and their various concerns, and probably in a way that they wouldn't necessarily do had that speaker, not come to school and given that presentation. So I think that's the type of thing that we should be doing. We obviously have to make sure parents and others know what we're doing, which I know we also did, weeks in advance, let parents know that this particular speaker was coming to school. So I think we should continue that effort, and hopefully we'll do that, going forward in future years. Maria.
Well, I just want to add that it was the students who said it was political, as far as I know, my own son. other people. And maybe they don't understand the term political, but they were definitely controversial topics. So if we are allowing artists to come in and perform about topics that are seen as controversial, I do believe there's a policy on that it really should be either impartial or there should be both sides. So are we opening up the door for any artist to discuss and address or introduce any possible controversial topic? I mean, the topics were partisan, for sure. I mean, they had a slant one side, so there wasn't the other side.
I don't agree with that, but, I mean, we can have further conversations about those specific topics. I think the point is, you know, when someone is coming to present at the high school or elsewhere, and they're presenting issues, there's the agenda in this particular instance was not about those particular issues. It was getting students to understand each other's differences and respect them. And to do that, you can't just talk about, you know, everybody, you know, 20 kids going into a class every day and not having any sort of conflict. You have to talk about, you know, some controversial issues in some circumstances, because those are the things that actually create issues as it relates to mutual respect or empathy, right? So I don't personally view that as political. It's just simply raising issues and outlining, you know, how you as an individual should react in those circumstances.
Well, I just am not sure there was a debrief or a moment for all students to give feedback, to share their thoughts on it. It sounded like it was a performance, and then they went to their next class. So I don't see how it was an empathy lesson. I see it was a performance, and the topics were definitely controversial. So I'm not sure how balanced it was.
Yeah, I would challenge that they were, you know, political or controversial topics. There were some, you know, there were poems brought up that were, you know, meant to outline the issues of mutual respect. Deanna?
I just, because I didn't see it on the online and Bill's here, how were parents notified of the artist coming? Because I did look through the weekly addresses and maybe I missed it, but how?
March 8th weekly update.
In the March 8th, okay. So that's great. So, you know, after getting the information about the performance, because I did look at all the YouTube videos and I understand how some parents might view certain things as more problematic for their, you know, belief structures or whatever. But I then went back and asked sort of what were the poems that were, you know, brought forward to the kids. In seeing both what he does in other venues and what was discussed in the schools, it sounded like he modified his address to be more appropriate to a high school audience. I think if parents just looked at a YouTube video of some of his performances and just looked, they might get a different perspective on sort of what was brought into the schools. And unfortunately, we don't have a video because of probably production, copyright issues. So I think we did the right thing. We notified parents, and from my understanding, there was a discussion with the artist about what was appropriate in our school system. And so, you know, that's part of education is, you know, it's our opportunity as parents to talk with our children after some of these things, and if they disagree, because I've had those comments, you know, my kids have listened to things that they don't necessarily agree with in school as well, and we talk about it. And so it's you know, you balance your school and home and have a conversation, and that's part of education. I think it's important for us to understand what was actually done in the school.
Well, I do know toxic manhood was addressed, a poem about, he implied that men could be toxic, masculinity could be, they should, you know, our students should rethink
I thought it was about empathy for men being empathetic, not toxic masculinity.
That topic came up, the poem about being racially profiled.
If I could, I think what he was talking about was a narrow definition of appropriate masculinity can be toxic.
Okay,
right?
but...
And it's sort of about how the stereotypes can narrow or kind of accepted behaviors, and then anything outside of that can be seen as wrong, and then trying to conform to a narrow definition of masculinity can be toxic to people who don't naturally feel or act that way. And so I don't think it's saying masculinity is toxic, but that a narrow definition of that. Right?
I just want to say, it was a little bit out of context. So the students, at least in my case, the people I know, they went, I mean, they're 14-year-old freshmen through 18-year-old seniors, so it was the same topic from a performer who generally performs for college students. Yes, he did tone it down, but I do feel it was a little bit out of context. It was definitely meant to challenge their thinking. I'm okay with that, but they were penalized if they left. So I know people did say they had the choice to stay, but if they left, they got an unexcused absence. I know it overlapped 2 classes, so if you left towards the end, you'd get an unexcused absence. So I'm just not sure it had enough of the fully articulated, impartial, both sides kind of view.
Okay. Well, I think the intent and purpose of it shouldn't be lost in the conversation either, which I think is the idea that spoken word poetry is in itself an art form, and it was to expose our students to spoken word poetry, right? So it's sort of, I've been thinking about it in terms of, when we read novels in English or do anything, there's always a story to it. There's something that happens, there's a story, there's a conflict and a resolution and those things. And, spoken word poetry is similar that way, right? Something has to happen. And so he wasn't brought to the school because of his views on any of these things, whether they're seen online or what have you. It really was about finding a successful contemporary spoken word poet and having that person come and perform for the students. Similar to years ago when I was here, we had someone named Sarah Kay come, and she and her brother performed spoken word poetry for the school. This is probably back in 2012, maybe 2013, and it was very successful. So I think that was the intent was around that spoken word poetry, and the poems themselves have to have a context, right? Something has to happen, and it generally is related to individual experience. So with this performer, it was about his experience growing up, and as a Colombian American growing up, and the experiences that he had, and he puts to language and to poetry kind of those stories. But that it was not. The assembly itself was not scheduled in order to have the perspectives
I
come
believe
forward.
that. I completely believe that. And I know it was in the newsletter. That's fine. He was it was edgy. I mean, I thought maybe a link to inform parents that it is a little edgy. I appreciate that the parent organization paid for that. I think that's great. I'm all about enrichment. I'm just, I do have feedback from people that, my own son. It just was a little bit out of, he's pretty straightforward. He thought some of it was political. So, and he's not the only one. So I just think we have to consider that when we bring in any artist.
That's fair.
Okay. All right, next up is the budget update. Dr. Lutzy.
Yes, here we are in April. Rounding third base, so to speak, in our budget process. The last 2 meetings, tomorrow night is a very important meeting. There is the public hearing at 7 o'clock at Town Hall with the Town Council. And the Town Council has really asked to hear people's voices, to hear some feedback from the community, from parents, from others about the budget. So we are optimistic that people will come out tomorrow night to have their voices heard with the Town Council. It starts at 7, again, over at Town Hall. Our budget itself is still at a 1.86. That's due to some really thoughtful, careful work. It's due to reductions in a variety of different areas, things that we've been talking about. As far as the savings that have been available to us this year, the conversion to natural gas, some of the insourcing, the in-housing of the print shop itself and the savings therein. We are without including our insurance number, we are the lowest in the DERG and across the region. And even with the insurance number, there's only one district that's lower than us, and that's because they have significant savings to the tune of about -8% in their health insurance somehow. So I'm not quite sure how they're doing that. But I think our very lean budget represents very careful work, and I hope that folks will come out to support that tomorrow night with the town council. The final meeting on the budget is Thursday, and that's the actual vote on the budget by the town council, where they'll put the final number forward, and then it goes back to the Board of Finance to determine mill rate and taxation and what have you. The conversations with the town council have been very productive. We spent about 3 hours or so with them a couple of weeks ago, where we answered a number of questions. I think it was 58 different questions, and we worked our way through as many of those as we could. Went back to see them again last week, and that was really just a focus on a couple of things. And so I thought I'd share with the board quickly, one of the things that came up was our kindergarten enrollment to date. So as of today, we have 283 kindergartners enrolled for next year across the 3 schools. The projections, I believe, were 247. So we're well over projections. And at this time last year, we were at 253. Actually, that number comes from mid-April. So 18 days from now, a year ago, we're at 253. So we're 30 students greater than that already. We do tend to trend upward from this point until the opening of the school year. So no crystal ball to tell us exactly where we'll be. But conservatively speaking, I think it's safe to say this 283 number will be higher than it is now. And if we were to open today with this number, we would need 2 additional kindergarten teachers. That's based on where they're breaking out. So we'll continue to enroll, continue to pick up students along the way, and see where the numbers and the breaks are, and make some final determinations over the summer as far as the staffing goes. But I bring that up, and I say that's very important because any further reduction to our budget is really twice as tough for us to absorb, because we've already budgeted based on what we believed we needed at the 247 number for our kindergarten enrollment, but now at being significantly over that, we already have to make up that difference in order to do that hiring, and any reduction really hits us twice as hard.
And you pointed out that to the town council, too.
I pointed that out as often as they would let me.
Yep.
Yes. Yes. And we talked also, and I'm glad
really
to
should
talk.
be asking for more.
We should be, but we can't,
We're
right?
not.
The town council does not have the ability to add to our budget,
Right.
unfortunately. So we ask them to approve the budget they have before them, remembering, of course, that there was a $150,000 reduction at the Board of Finance in conversation that we talked about, and we're intending that to come from the retirement turnover savings. We still are just with a couple of retirements in hand. We anticipate maybe after the April break, we'll get a few, because sometimes people go on vacation and realize they'd like to do that forever. So we get some retirements after vacations, and we'll see where we are as the year continues. Projection was 247. So that's the quick budget update. Again, I think it's important just to reiterate the value that the town council places on hearing the community's voice about the budget. I think that they're very busy, as we all are. They're working all day, they're back and forth, they're running in and out of meetings and what have you. And I think that anything people can do to share their viewpoint on where we are with the budget, I think is very, very important. At the town council, there was conversation about identifying a percentage number as a ceiling for the Board of Education for the next 3 years. And the number that was being bandied around at first was about a 1.5% annual growth rate for the Board of Education's operating budget over each of the next 3 years, which Brendan pointed out astutely, that's significantly below the anticipated rates of inflation as we go forward. We know that that's below the move ahead, the cost drivers that we have when we look at things like transportation, we look at salaries, certainly benefits as we think about our insurance. And again, I think we're doing a wonderful job sort of containing those costs, but a 1.5% trend on insurance is unheard of as far as I know. So to put such a cap on the Board of Education's operating budget really is in effect creating a need for reductions every
That's
year.
$1 million
As those
cut.
drivers, they continue to trend upward, and we only have that other 18% that's not salaries or benefits to try to manage, and I think we do it very well, but there's not that much opportunity there to offset all of the rest all of the time. So to come out and talk about the value of education in the town and for people to share their thoughts about the budget to the town council, I know that they listen. And I think that's very important, as does the Board of Finance. So this is the opportunity tomorrow night, and I hope people take it.
Agreed. We need people to show up tomorrow night, 7 o'clock at Town Hall, if you're listening. Deanna?
Yeah, I just want to, because I was just going back to our presentation in February, just because it's been, you have to get back into it, refresh myself. And it's reiterating what you just said, but I think it's important to say we budgeted a 1 staff member decline. And we're already seeing increases that won't allow us to take that.
Right.
And so we're going to have to find savings elsewhere after we get through this process already. We're already, and so, I think it's important for parents to understand that, is that, we can't do anything about how we budgeted at the beginning of the year. Things changed dramatically. I mean, I'm even looking, and maybe you were rounding, but I have notes from the end of March that had 280 kindergarten students, and now we're at 283. Now, maybe you were rounding back then, but
we've picked up 3 kids.
So we picked up 3 kids. So
Since
I'm
last-
like, my little notebook
right?
sometimes comes in handy.
We have literally 3 student addition.
So I mean,
that was the exact number.
it's not going down, it's increasing within a week, because I have down 327, that number was thrown out there. So, this is not going in our favor right now. I mean, it's great for the district, it's great for the vibrancy of the district and things like that, but I'm concerned for our students. I mean, I think we as a Board of Ed, a big benefit of our district is our class size guidelines. And, I remember when my kids were in those younger ages, is the importance of those class size guidelines and all the research around the effectiveness of teaching when you have smaller class sizes. So I would just urge parents to make their voices heard. It's important for their kids. So anyway.
Just
said.
one more reminder, too, in case people forgot. Our budget is $850,000 below the Board of Finance guidance that they gave in the fall. So it's not like we're, asking for anything more than they guided us to come in with. We're $850,000 below. We started at $700,000 based on all of, your initial work and the administration's work. And then we got cut $150,000 by the Board of Finance. So we're delivering an incredibly conservative budget.
It's almost a full percentage point.
Yep. All right.
Great, thank you.
Next is action items. First is the VEX Robotics field trip. Dr. Lutz.
Make a motion, or want me to talk about it first?
Why don't we talk about it first?
Okay,
Yeah,
sure,
all right.
glad to. So as I mentioned earlier, our VEX Robotics team, and you have in front of you a brief write-up of this, which you received earlier as well. They were very successful this year in the Southern New England VEX Robotics High School Regional Tournament. They were the champions. So because of the win, they qualified to go to the World Competition, April 24th to 28th in the Kentucky Exposition Center out in Louisville. The team itself they've been here with us before. If you remember, they brought the robot before when we were able to use it a little bit prior to the meeting. This is a growing program. And I think that Jim and the team and the work that they're doing, they continue to sort of evolve and improve every year. Last year, maybe the year before, was the first time they'd gone to the Southern New England Regionals. This is the first time they've won, and they're excited to go. It's right after the April break, and they would like your approval to travel out there and do it.
After seeing the robots, I can understand why they've gone as far as they have.
Yeah.
They're amazing.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
It's
one
great.
of them was built in like 48 hours or
Yeah.
72 hours, something like that.
Yeah, and there's strategy to it too. So you create the robot and you hope it can do all of those things it does. And then you team up with another team, or you partner with another team and go into competition together. And so you do all of your work, but then when you get there, you also have to know how to communicate and collaborate and use the strengths of your robot, and they use the strengths of theirs, and you try to find the right partner who's complementary for you. So it's really a whole bunch of those 21st century skills that we talk about all rolled into one. Great opportunity for our kids.
Excellent.
Yeah, we're proud of them.
So can I have a motion to approve the field trip? Penny, second. Jen, all those in favor? Thanks.
You know, can I
Next.
just ask,
Yeah.
make a comment
Sure.
that, we seem to be having a lot of success with some of these teams, and they're making it further and further, and it's a pretty big expense for families, and I would just say, I mean, it's a little late for this budget cycle, but maybe in the next budget cycle, we look to sort of have some kind of relief, because this is a big number for these kids. I'm.
Well, I think the other point there is we spend a lot on athletics, and just getting a sense as to how much we're spending on athletics versus, and we spend a lot on VPA as well. Get a sense as to how much we're spending there versus in these sorts of activities, because there's a ton of enrichment obviously going on in these areas.
Sure. If we, as we consider something like that, I'd say that as you just ended with it, there are so many of these activities.
Yeah.
We have Model UN, as you know, that goes out all the time. We've got debate clubs, we've got others, that if the board were interested in looking at something like this, really, I think equitability, being equitable for all of these groups would be very important. And as we're talking about trying to protect our 1.86 budget, makes me a little nervous. So I'm glad to study it, and I think it's a good idea to study it. The challenge with things like this, and the same goes with like an Odyssey of the Mind type thing, that you don't know you're going until you go to the event and win. Right? So we also had Odyssey of the Mind teams who did very well. And they're going out to the Worlds. I don't know where the Worlds are this year. But so we can certainly take a look at it.
Yeah,
and
I just
see
think
if
that,
there's
I
something
mean,
we
I was
can do.
involved in the policy making for some of the club teams for sports.
Yep.
And we separated out money for those club teams. And I think it's important that as a district, we make that commitment to everything, not just.
And maybe there's a way to at least
We
sort
can
of
come up with
partner, right?
rules,
Defray
yes.
the cost somehow
Yes.
in order
Yeah.
to smooth out. You're right, because this is $1,600 per family,
Yes.
to get out there.
And I
per
think
student.
there's
And
two
that's
kids from one
quite a
family
bit of money.
going.
Yeah, well, that's quite a bit. Agreed. It was a great honor. It's a wonderful thing to be able to do.
Yeah.
But we'd never want a student unable to go and do something like this for financial reasons.
Right.
And I know the PFA has always been helpful with that, and the PTCs at the other levels too. But it's certainly something that the board would like us to take a look at. We'd be glad to do it and sort of come up with a couple of different scenarios and see what if anything, would make sense. Glad to do that.
Thank you.
Thanks. Jen?
Just adding really quickly, not that I'm against this at all, because, it's amazing, but paying for, just for example, like the basketball team, like we made it for the first time in 57 years, and like that was a huge expense on parents that had never happened before and wasn't in the budget, and so we all,
Sure.
a lot of athletics pay also, like to do these extra things, and not saying it's right, but just it is, it goes both ways, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think looking at like the baseline versus traveling to the state tournament or traveling to, a national competition, I think probably have to look at it both ways, right? To understand what the costs are.
Great. Okay.
All right.
We still need a motion.
So the next is.
Did we get a motion to approve it?
Yes, we approved.
Oh, did we?
Yeah.
Oh, we did approve it. Did we vote? We approved it.
Did you vote?
Yeah, we did, for the
Oh,
field trip.
Yeah, we did.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I can't remember, we had a motion. Did we vote?
Did we vote?
Thought we voted. Yeah.
All in favor?
We did?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I missed that part.
Thank
Yeah, we
you.
voted. That's great. Everyone was excited.
Well, good.
Deanna jumped in.
Yeah, when Lisa's not there.
I know.
I feel lost.
All right, next up is a motion to approve the New Canaan High School graduation date for June 18th, 2019.
Yes.
Is there a motion? Oh, Tom,
two
second.
graduating.
Jen?
The graduate parents.
All
Right.
Or I'll let you do that.
Discussion, Dr. Lutzi?
The very brief discussion is, Connecticut requires us to wait until April to pick our graduation date. So today's April 1st, so it's the earliest we can do it. And
But this is not a joke.
this is not a joke. No, this is for real. What we traditionally have done is have graduation on the 181st day with our students, so that if there is a rain delay or anything else, we still have the other day to do it. So it will be that Tuesday, the 18th, with the 19th available in case of rain. And it will be, I imagine, the same as we have here at the high school at 5 o'clock. And we'll hope for wonderful weather.
All right. All those in favor? Great, thank you. Next up is Saks PTC donation in the amount of $5,177.20 for water bottle fillers. I have a motion. Anyone? Jen? Penny, second? Dr. Lutzy, any comments?
We are continuing to install these around the district. We're having great success doing so. This was almost under the 5,000 threshold, but then the additional cost for installation just bumped it up. So we're grateful to the PTC over at Saks, as we are to all of them. There are counters on these, and so we're actually watching how many water bottles we're taking out of circulation, and it gets very quickly into the thousands anytime we install these. Be interesting at some point by the end of the year to go through and count them all up and see what we've done as a district. But
that'd be great.
Part of our initiative around green, and our kids are carrying water bottles more and more, and it's a great thing.
That's great. Do we have any regular water fountains left after these are done?
I think there's still a few
There's
around.
still some.
Yeah. They last forever because no one uses them.
Right.
Or they're disgusted by
Yeah,
it.
you're right. Yeah. But we do try to put these in where those were.
Right.
There's a little more work that has to be done. They are, of course, all ADA compliant and all that. But
Right.
yeah, we are slowly cycling those out and replacing them.
Okay, great. Thank you to the PTC. All those in favor? Great. Thank you. Next, comments from the public. Anyone? Nope. All right. Announcements and future business. Dr. Lutzy.
Sure. So a quick announcement. Today, April 1st, we've begun a district-wide wellness initiative, just to share with you. It's Every Step Counts. As you know, we've talked about the wellness team before, the committee that we've had for about 1.5 years now. So what they've come up with is a website where people can register, and they can register their Fitbits or iPhones or anything else. And every step that people take gets counted towards the pool of steps towards the goal by the end of the month. And the goal is, by the end of April, to have walked around the earth 3 times.
Wow.
Is it 150 million steps? Only 75 million? Yeah, we're aiming low.
Let's bump it up.
Well, I know it's around the world
100
3
million.
times. So 75 million steps for all staff. And we've asked to see sort of what group of staff will get the most steps. Any guesses out of the gate, which employee group would get the most steps throughout their days?
PE teachers.
Custodians.
Yeah,
Custodians
there you go.
are just
Yeah.
crushing it, because, and they should be, because that's their job, as they're moving around the buildings. So everybody can register. We will send the link to the board as well. If you'd like to register, you're welcome to. And this same link will be active for 1 year, so we can use it for other competitions and other things. So, but it's another initiative by our wellness committee in order to promote wellness among our staff and throughout our building. So we're excited about that.
great.
It just started today. Susan and I are in contact with someone to set up an evening presentation with parents in the community, as we talked about last board meeting. So we remain in contact back and forth, and we're working on getting that nailed down as soon as we can. We are continuing also to develop the survey that we'll share with the board in the upcoming weeks, and community members as well, to take a look at the questions, what have you. You know that the school survey, as I mentioned before, is not particularly valid or reliable. It's put together by some teachers just as a quick snapshot for some info, but the one that we're going to be creating and sharing will be much more valid and reliable, and we'll have input from various stakeholders prior to administering it with the community. So that work continues as well. And I'll have more of an update at our next meeting, since, it'll be the second meeting of the month, as has been our habit here. And so at our next meeting, we'll have some information about the New Canaan High School graduation requirements, an update there. We've been doing some work on what's called cogen, which is cogeneration of power, electricity. We're moving forward with the roof over at South and solar and different opportunities there. And also working with an engineer talking about the natural gas and is there a potential to develop a cogen type system using small turbines or something like that would burn the natural gas, generate electricity, feed it into the building, and do it at a much lower cost than what we're currently paying. And it'd be greener power as well, since it's natural gas that you'd be burning and doing that. That could be helpful as they contemplate running the gas line over to West, but that's a conversation that we're having with Eversource on the side. We do this regardless, if it makes sense based on the engineering and looking at it all. But we're definitely going forward at this point with our RFP around the solar and looking at getting that going this summer as they redo the roof over at South. So exciting stuff. So we'll have an update on all of that for the board next meeting as well. We'll run through it. Just to share with you what we're thinking and take some questions if you have them. And again, update, and we'll have statement of accounts. And there you go.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, can I have a motion to adjourn? Deanna, second. Penny, all those in favor? Thank you.
Thanks.